אני רוצה להזמין לבמה את גברת סוזן בארט, שהיא תדבר באנגלית, אבל אני אתן כמה מילים בעברית עליה. היא יחד עם חבר הכנסת גליק, היא היוזמת של הפגישה היום. סוזן היא עשתה עלייה מארצות הברית בשנת 2003, ומאז היא עובדת עם כל הכוחות על העבודה המאוד חשובה הזאת, על העניין של חינוך נישואים. היא הקדישה את זה לזיכרון של ההורים שלה, וזה, אתם תראו עוד מעט שזה נושא מאוד חשוב לה. אז כמו שאנחנו אומרים באנגלית, without further ado, I'm proud to introduce Susan Barth. Thank you.
I am so grateful to MK Knesset Yehudah Glick and to all of you for making this day possible. Having said that, the tough news is we are losing the Jewish family. Because according to the annual report of the Israeli rabbinic courts, in 2016, there was a 1.8% increase in the number of divorces. That translated into 10,841 Jewish couples getting divorced in 2016, and the number is rising. The report also showed that there was increases in the major Israeli cities. We have the distinction of being in Yerushalayim, the winner of the divorce capital, for having 725 couples. Tel Aviv, 701 in 2016. And what this translates to is a situation where we have children growing up in unhealthy, competitive environments, bringing tremendous sadness in the Jewish world. We need to fix this. We need to take action now. We need to take dramatic steps to stem the tide and create truly Jewish American children that will grow up with the values of our heritage. We need to teach the Jewish families how to become Jewish families again. But most of all, we need to teach young couples and the future couples how to nurture their relationships and how that they can become the best possible contributors to our generations. But the good news is there's a solution. And the solution will bring tremendous pride to the Jewish people, and it will reinstate marriage as being the institution that will bring the best and highest values to our people. What is the solution? It is marriage education. And how do I know this? Because I have spent the last 10 years of my life doing marriage education projects in memory of the couple of 52 years of incredible marriage made in heaven of my parents, Isser ben Abraham ben Yamin and Fego Batstu Nissen. My mother had Alzheimer's for 18 years, and 18 years too many. But I wanted to do something that would be in their memory. And so that we had the first international conference on marriage education in 2011 where 360 professionals came together. But in addition to that, we have the privilege, our alma mater, Together in Happiness, Baocher, that again I established in memory of my parents, to bring the most world-acclaimed, scientifically researched marriage curriculum known as PrEP, Prevention Relationship Education Program, pioneered by Professor Howard Markman, who you will hear shortly. And it is his classic book, The Bible of Fighting for Your Marriage. It's a must-read for every couple. And the truth is that these initiatives allowed me to be in touch with the movers and shakers in the world of marriage education, and with the accumulated research that they provided, we were able, when MK Yehudah Glick and those that are involved in the legislation proposed it, we could provide that research because we had the advantage of having the experts of the world. I cannot begin to tell you that we had cheerleaders from California to Florida that are celebrating the fact that we're having this today, and they've been a part of the entire movement. But the truth is that we need to work together because the group that needs it the most are the pre-marriage education. And we're going to show you today why it's cost effective, why legislation should be introduced, but most of all, why every one of us should make it the top priority of giving our couples the tools and the skills that will make them to be the strongest couples they have. To show my gratitude to my parents, I've dedicated my part of the program to my parents, Yisra ben Abraham ben Yamin and Fego Bastu Knesset. I also have to say I am deeply indebted to the wisdom teachings of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, whose advice for the welfare of the family is legendary. I have been consistently inspired by the Rebbe to pursue the pivotal social need of cementing our family units and heal intra-family wounds. And a special thanks goes to our spiritual mentor, Rabbi Dr. Label Wolf of the Yosef Chris Center in Australia. The vision of Biyahat Baoshar is to create a national movement for marriage education. Why? Because we need it foundationally for the survival of Jewish people. I thank all of you from the bottom of my heart. Make sure you listen well today and think about how you're going to contribute to this being on the national agenda for our generations to come.
Thank you very much, Susan. עכשיו נשמע מהחברי כנסת, נתחיל חבר הכנסת חיליק בר, סגן יושב ראש הכנסת, נשוי לעידית, אבא טרי,
נשוי בזוגיות מושלמת.
אבא טרי לבת טריה, מזל טוב, ואבא ותיק להראל ואוריה, חבר הכנסת.
אני אדבר בעברית, but I want to say to you in English, Susan, I'm sure that your parents are very proud of you and what you are doing for the families in the world, the Jewish, among the Jewish people and in Israel. So thank you for the contribution and thank you, my brother Yehudah Glick, for להרים את הכפפה, getting the glove on this issue. I want to tell you a few things. אני רוצה להגיד לכם כמה דברים. היה חשוב לי לבוא לפה באמת כדי להראות קודם כל שהנושא הזה של משפחתיות הוא לא נושא של ימין או מרכז או שמאל, של אופוזיציה או קואליציה. כשעושים דברים חשובים בשביל עם ישראל, בשביל העם היהודי, זה מעל הכל, זה חוצה גבולות. כמו שאנחנו לומדים לנהוג וכמו שאנחנו לומדים תואר ראשון בכל נושא אחר, יכול להיות שגם קורסים כאלה שלא ידעתי שהם קיימים, לפחות אני, יתרמו להורדת שיעור הגירושים, יתרמו לזוגיות יותר פוריה ומתוך כך גם להיות הורים יותר טובים לילדים שלנו. המשפחה שלי, אני יודע, היא עמוד התווך בחיים שלי, גם גדלה לאחרונה מ4 שהיינו ל5 ברוך השם, כשנולדה ביתי הטריה אוריה, אני אומר יובל, יעל לפני מספר ימים. אני מנסה להתחרות דמוגרפית ביהודה גליק, יש לי עוד לאן לשאוף, אבל עדיין. ולכן אני חושב שכמי שנולד בצפת ועלה לירושלים, וגם המסורת היהודית וגם התא המשפחתי הם באמת אבן ויסוד בכל מה שאני עושה, ומתוך זה אני פועל. אני רוצה לברך אותך, סוזן, אני רוצה לברך אותך, יהודה, אני רוצה לברך את כל המשתתפים, ולקוות שבזכות הקורסים שלך, בזכות ההכנה הזאת לזוגות צעירים, לנישואים מאושרים בישראל, ואולי גם בעם היהודי, אולי גם תרחיבי את זה לגולה, אנחנו נדע משפחות יותר טובות יותר, נדע זוגיות טובה יותר, ואם תצליחו גם להוריד את המגפה הזאת של שיעור הגירושים, אז תבורכו מן השמיים. תודה רבה והמון בהצלחה בפרויקט ובכלל. תודה רבה. אני מתנצל שכסגן יו"ר כנסת חייב לחזור למליאה להצבעות, אבל אני אצפה משם. תודה.
תודה רבה, חבר הכנסת בר. אנחנו עכשיו נמשיך עם השותף שלנו, עם חבר הכנסת יהודה גליק, שהוא יחד עם סוזן יזם את הכנס המאוד חשוב היום. חבר הכנסת גליק מסיעת הליכוד, ידוע כמי ששם בראש סדר היום שלו את השיח המכבד וההכלה הדדית בין כל חלקי האוכלוסייה בחברה הישראלית, בין הדתות השונות ובין כל העמים ובין קבוצות שונות בתוך העם היהודי. לכן לא מפתיע שהוא מוביל כיום הצעת חוק שמטרתו לסייע לבני זוג בשלב מוקדם של חייהם המשותפים לרכוש כלים לזוגיות מוצלחת, תוך כיבוד הדדי ויכולות להבין ולהכיל את צרכי בן ובת הזוג. חבר הכנסת יהודה גליק, תודה.
ברוכים הבאים לכולם, מאוד 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 שמח לראות שיש לנו פה קהל גדול, גם חברי הכנסת שהיו עוד יחזרו, הם הלכו להצביע, אבל הם כולם יבואו. לפני שאני אומר את דבריי, אני קודם כל רוצה כמובן להודות באמת מקרב הלב כמובן לכל המשתתפים, אבל בראש ובראשונה לשניים, לחברתנו סוזן בארט, נכון? שהיא מייסדת את עמותת ביחד באושר, שבאמת במסירות ובהשקעה רבה יזמה וארגנה את הכנס, והיא כבר עוסקת המון שנים בתחום הזה. הניסיון שלה בתחום הזה הניב פירות בכך שהיא סייעה גם בידינו לספק לנציגי משרד האוצר את המחקרים האמפיריים שהם ביקשו כדי להוכיח שבאמת ההכשרה לזוגיות בשלב מוקדם באמת מוריד את אחוזי הגירושים. סוזן עוסקת בזה במסירות נפש רבה, ותמיד מזכירה שהיא עושה את זה לכבוד ולזכר הוריה. אני בטוח שגם הם איתנו בכנס הזה מחייכים מלמעלה מרוב נחת על הבת שלהם. תודה רבה לך סוזן על הכנס הזה ועל הכל. תודה כמובן גם, אני רוצה להודות לרב שמואל סלוטקי. Will you disappear? הנה, כן, סוזן הרב סלוטקי מארגון צוהר, שבעצם הוא זה שדחף אותי לנושא החשוב הזה שאנחנו עושים בו היום. הוא פנה אליי בעניין, ומהרגע שהוא הציג לי את הנושא מאוד נקשרתי. מאז אנחנו צועדים יחד בניסיונות לשכנע את שרי הממשלה בחשיבות העניין, אז אני מודה גם לרב שמואל וגם לכל ארגון צוהר שעוסקים בנושא הזה בהתנדבות כבר כמה וכמה שנים. אני כמובן גם רוצה להזכיר את העמותות שידברו יותר מאוחר, כי באמת חשוב לי לא רק שחברי הכנסת פה כדי להראות שזה ימין ושמאל, אלא גם ארגונים דתיים וחילוניים. יש לנו כמובן, הזכרנו ביחד באושר, יש לנו את מיאמי חוסן סנטר מיאמי USA, יש לנו כמובן את ארגון צוהר, יש לנו את האגודה הישראלית לגישור ויישוב סכסוכים, אייליס, יש לנו מכון שינוי הרצליה, מכון קלר רבין לייעוץ זוגי, וזוג ופרט מיסודו של מרכז עמק השווה, באמת ארגונים שעוסקים בנושא. ועכשיו למה שרציתי לומר, למרות שחברים בזוגיות, תודה, זה אחד הדברים הכי חשובים. אני אומר, יש חז"ל כתוב בשלוש דרכים האישה נקנית בשלוש דרכים, בפרגון, במחמאות ובהכרת תודה. ונדמה לי שזה אולי א' ב' של זוגיות, כי תראו, אנחנו עוסקים בנושא שהוא כואב, המצוקה של גרושים ושל גרושות, זה מצוקה לא רק של הזוג, זה מצוקה קודם כל כמובן לגרוש ולגרושה, זה מצוקה לילדים, זו מצוקה למשפחה המורחבת, להורים, זאת מצוקה רגשית, כלכלית, פסיכולוגית. אנחנו רואים את אחוזי האובדנות בקרב המתגרשים פי כמה וכמה מאשר האובדנות בקרב כלל הציבור. אז הכאב הוא כאב, גם כשיש גירושים so called בנועם, זה מלווה בהמון המון המון כאב. ואני מאמין למה שכתוב בתורה. כתוב כל המחלה ששמתי מצרים לא אשים עליך, כי אני השם רופאיך. לכאורה אם אני לא אשים, אז מה זה אני רופא? כי הרפואה הכי טובה היא הרפואה המונעת. ונדמה לי שהדבר הזה הוא כל כך נכון. אני גם מבסוט שאנחנו, באושר שאנחנו בחרנו את הדיון הזה, בדיוק השבת, כשהשבת בפרשת השבוע עוסקת בזוגיות, מתוך חסד, חיפוש זוגיות, ואגב, הזוג הראשון בתורה שכתוב עליהם אהבה, ויאהביה. אז גם וינחם יצחק אחרי אמו, זוכר את ההורים, וגם ויאהביה. ואנחנו עוסקים בנושא שלכאורה זוגות לליל החתונה, אני אומר לכם את זה בתור אחד שחיתן בן לפני שבוע, בליל החתונה מתכוננים לשואו, הצלם והתזמורת וצלם המגנטים והאולם והתפריט וטעימות ומה לא עושים. אבל לחיי הנישואים, אנחנו מוכרח לומר בימים האחרונים אנחנו עדים לאיזשהו מסע ארצי בנושא של הטרדות מיניות. חלק מהנושא של הטרדות מיניות בא מזה שאנשים מתייחסים לבן אדם אחר, לאישה, כאיזשהו חפץ, כמשהו, במקום מה שבניית זוגיות כל כך מחנכת אותנו לדברים של הכרה, של הקשבה, של הכלה, של שיח, של תקשורת. ולפעמים הדבר הזה שהוא פוטנציאל להיות דבר כל כך אדיר, בנייה חורבה מחורבות ירושלים, זוגיות, הופך להיות חורבן עצמו. ולפעמים רק בחינוך קל אפשר לשנות. אמרתי פעם למישהו, טיפ קטן, קיבלת אס.אם.אס, וואטסאפ, מה נשמע? אתה יכול להגיד בסדר, אתה יכול להגיד, איזה כיף לקבל ממך הודעה. רק מזה שקיבלתי את ההודעה אני מרגיש בסדר, ואתה מוסיף אימוג'י של לב או לא יודע מה, שינית את כל התשובה. היום זה כל כך פשוט. כמובן, זה כמובן יותר מסובך מזה, אבל אני חושב שלפעמים כשבונים זוגיות בריאה וטובה, הזוג יכול להקרין את זה לילדים, למשפחה. אתה יכול לחיות ביחד בחדר קטן. כשהזוגיות היא לא בריאה, אז גם אם אני פה ואתה בצד השני של העולם, השנאה והכעסים חיים שם, וגם אם ממשיכים לחיות, החיים הם מלאים במתח. ולכן אני שוב מברך גם את סוזן וגם את שמואל, ובאמת את כל הארגונים, כל מי שעוסק בנושא הזה, עוסק פה בכל ההצלה של זוג, זה הצלה אדירה, ורפואה מונעת זה הדבר הכי טוב, ולכן ברכותיי לכולם. תודה רבה.
Our next speaker is going to be coming to us from the United States via video link. So just give us one moment to set that up, and in the meantime I'll introduce him. Howard Markman is truly the father of marriage education, as you will soon find out. He is a professor and co-director of the Center for Marital and Family Studies at the University of Denver. He is also the president of the Prevention and Relationship Enhancement Program, PrEP, which we will hear about today, designed to help troubled couples. Professor Markman has written several books on conflicts and relationships and is a well-known resource in the media, and we are deeply honored to have him with us from the United States today. Professor Markman, I'll just make one scheduling note because there's some votes going on in the Knesset. We have some Knesset members who may show up during your presentation and will be required to just shift to them for a couple minutes. So if you can just, if that happens, I'll just politely interject and we'll hear from them. But that's just because the votes are ongoing and they're in and out of the session. But with that, we're truly honored to introduce Professor Markman. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, member of Knesset, Yehudah Glick, and thank you, Susan, and Together for Happiness, for inviting me to give this talk to the Knesset on why pre-marriage education holds the key for the future for healthy Israeli couples and why it's cost-effective. I want to dedicate this talk to my parents, Arnie and Claire. And Mom just passed away recently, and Susan suggested maybe my parents and her parents are talking together in heaven. A little bit about the marriage and divorce rates in the United States. Right now, the divorce rates are stable at about 43 to 45% for first-time marriages in terms of risk, and marriage rates are slowly falling due to increasing in cohabitation in the States. Now in Israel, as much as I can determine, the divorce rates are rising fairly steadily, moving toward the US rates and the EU rates. And as of 2011, the divorce risk was about 27% for Israeli couples, compared to at that same period for the EU, 33%. Now, divorce rates are not simply a demographer's delight, as my colleague Bernie Bloom once noted, because there are social costs associated with marital distress and divorce. You have emotional and physical problems for adults and children, school problems for the kids, decreased work productivity for adults, shown in several studies. And overall, marital distress and divorce is best estimated that it costs the country, the United States, $112 billion a year. So obviously less in Israel, but certainly a substantial figure. Now, negative communication and mismanaged conflict, because disagreements are inevitable in marriages today, that these are the major roots, or research has shown, major roots and causes to a large degree of marital distress and divorce. Now, premarital education is very effective of counteracting these very dynamics, because we can help couples improve their communication and improve their conflict management thereby improving their satisfaction over time and preventing divorce. Now there are, on the other side of the coin, or maybe, shall we say, the other side of the shekel, there are benefits of a stable and healthy marriage for adults, for children, and for the community, and for the country. We have greater work productivity and financial security for families. There are fewer risks for mental health problems of adults, particularly depression and anxiety. Better physical health. Stable and healthy couples and marriages live longer, have more satisfying sex, they're happier, and have more friends. For children, fewer risks of mental health problems, behavioral problems, better physical health, better school performance, less teen pregnancy and delinquency, and just in general, do better in life. So pictorially, spouses, just one picture worth 1,000 words, do better at work, earn more money, feel happier in life. Children, more friends, do better in school, do better emotionally, do better in life. So in a series of studies, we looked at the reasons for divorce that people say, and you can see that on the lower end, domestic violence, little marriage prep, up to married too young. Now, the top 3 reasons for divorce, people say too much conflict, too much arguing, too much fighting, too much cheating, infidelity, and in general, the biggest one is lack of commitment. Now, premarital education directly deals with issues of conflict and commitment, as well as helping couples protect the positives that bring people together in the first place. In the same series of studies, we also said, okay, what was the last straw? Was there a last straw? One event that happened that really sealed the deal for the divorce? 90% said there was a last straw. And of the top 3, infidelity, domestic violence, the loss of that loving feeling, all can be counteracted by premarital relationship education. Now, traditionally in the States and in Israel, the major response to problems of divorce and all these social costs that we focused on has been marital couples therapy, which is great and has been shown to be very, very effective. However, most couples marry and divorce without seeking or receiving services based on best practices in couples therapy. And in fact, relationship problems in general, at least in the States, is the major presenting problems that people have coming to individual therapy. So another option that we'll be focusing on here for the government of Israel to be thinking about when it comes to improving the health of couples in Israel and preventing divorce is pre-marriage education. The goal of which is to increase the couple's chances of having a happy, stable, successful relationship through intervening before marriage by teaching couples communication skills and principles that over 40 years of research across the world actually has demonstrated is associated with a healthy marriage over time. In addition, as part of pre-marriage education, couples have a chance to slow down and think and talk about marriage, and also learn of options that are out there in the community, including couples therapy, parenting programs, child therapy, if problems arise in the future. So comparing quickly premarital education and couples therapy delivered by a licensed professional. On the other hand, to individuals, we can expand the reach of couples, getting to couples through premarital education. It's delivered in groups, in classes, by a leader that's trained just in that program. It doesn't have to be a therapist, it can be. And the reach is far greater. So this is a psychoeducational preventative model that couples in couples therapy generally talk about personal issues in the past, of course, but this is not the case in premarital education. Couples will call that this is a class. They will not talk about personal issues except with their partner. They will learn ground rules for talking without fighting and handling conflict. And this extends the reach because while all of this is generally appealing, at least in the States, to women that we know that are focused on a class and learning ground rules and how to communicate with their partner without fighting is a major draw. Men tend to really enjoy the classes as do the women. Now, the major program we'll be focusing on today, because it's the basis of the Israeli PrEP program is the prevention and relationship education program that I've been developing with colleagues since the late 1970s and 80s. And we began and remain as a premarital preventative intervention program for couples with the overarching goal of strengthening relationships before marriage, increasing healthy marriages over time, and preventing marital distress and instability. And the research can clearly suggest that we can do this with the benefits accruing as we talked about. So PrEP and iPrEP are psychoeducational program, skill training. It's based on research. It's tested in large numbers of studies, over probably 20 or 30 studies now. And we regularly refine and update the program based on new research and clinical experience. So overarchingly, the major research and theoretical foundations of PrEP and iPrEP and premarital education in general is all couples are going to have conflict and disagreements over common issues like money, children, religion, household tasks, sex, parenting. It's not the issues we find that cause the problems. It's how the issues are handled. And the positive reason, because people don't get married to fight, to handle conflict. People get married to be a team, to be parents, to have fun, to support each other, and to be committed over a lifetime. So pre-marriage education focuses on the positives as well. Now, don't have time to describe our 40-year research base in PrEP, but a lot of what we've done over the years, starting with the video recorders that were less expensive in the 1970s and 80s, we've identified patterns of communication that we counteract in the program that are associated with current and future problems. So we call escalation, invalidation, negative interpretation, and withdrawals. So I don't have time to go through all examples of this and show videos, which we do in the program, but basically these are destructive ways of handling conflict that erode the positivity that and the love that is there in the first place. Now, what are the data about pre-marriage education? Does it work? And the answer is yes, it does. Alan Hawkins at Brigham Young University in Utah did a meta-analysis, 47 studies showed that pre-marriage education improves currently and in the future relationship quality. Couples learn the skills and use the skills over time in terms of handling conflict and resolving conflict. In studies done by myself and Scott Stanley, Paul Amato at Penn State, show that we can actually, through premarital education, reduce the risk of divorce about 30%. And interestingly, there are about 10% of couples in some of these studies that after doing a premarital program, kind of slow things down and some cases actually decide it's not a good fit, it's not a good time, and decide not to marry. And that way of preventing divorce is actually a good outcome. In terms of PrEP studies, particularly in a series of long-term studies comparing PrEP to a no intervention control group or naturally occurring premarital counseling or intervention in the States delivered in religious organizations primarily, that up to 5 years later, the PrEP couples have higher levels of relationship quality, communication quality, handling conflict, satisfaction, and lower rates of verbal and physical aggression. Now, in the longest term study in the field to date, probably in the whole couples intervention field, that couples who are happier and have more positive relationships coming into the program, completing the program, were those who are more likely to stay together and have happy relationships. Interestingly, those same kind of couples who do naturally occurring premarital counseling without the skills, without the education, actually have a higher risk of divorce. So we're really saving the marriages and promoting the marriages of the very couples that are destined to go on and stay together with this boost of training. In Germany, where we've done a series of studies of premarital education using a German version of the PrEP program, that we have found that over a 1.5 year follow-up, that we have about a 7% divorce rate in the control couples in purple, and over a 5 year period, the control couples are divorcing, have a 25% divorce rate, and the PrEP couples about 5%. So showing that through premarital intervention, we can prevent divorce. And here's an example of the mechanism that here's a measure of negative nonverbal communication. So before the intervention in blue, the PrEP couples are actually communicating a little bit more negatively. You can see a decrease in negative communication pre to post by looking at the blue figure, and a slight increase in negative communication pre to post. But then 5 years later, dramatic increase in negative communication in the control couples, and the PrEP couples remain at that level that they entered into the study. In Germany, when we have compared PrEP couples to control couples using young couples in actual therapy, we find 11 years later that the PrEP couples, about 25% divorce rate, control couples, about 50%. So we're clearly having an impact on the dimensions that we want in terms of increasing quality and decreasing satisfaction through premarital education in general and PrEP in particular. In a new series of studies that we're continuing now and being tested in a large-scale trial in the States, that internet version of PrEP that we call ePrEP, done by independent researchers using an internet version of the program, which we're now comparing to another internet therapy program funded by the US government called ePrEP. We have found in a series of randomized clinical trials, or they have found in a series of randomized clinical trial, that, and that's the gold standard, that the ePrEP couples, the PrEP couples, showed increases pre to post and at a 1-year follow-up in commitment, dedication to the relationship. They were checking out alternatives less, which decreases risk of cheating and infidelity. They had fewer of the danger signs we've talked about and more positive communication and conflict management, lower levels of physical aggression, lower levels of psychological aggression, and it actually extended to individual functioning with lower levels of depression. The final study, the PrEP evaluation study that I want to mention today, is an example from a study that was just completed, another long-term study up to 10-year follow-up in the US Army, where we evaluated primarily at Fort Campbell during the up-tempo stage of the wars we were fighting, and I guess in some ways still are, in Afghanistan and Iraq, where we randomly assigned couples to a military version of PrEP, very similar to PrEP 8.0 and iPrEP, and delivered by clergy compared to a randomly selected, naturally occurring control group. Fort Campbell's the home of the 101st Airborne, which actually were the division back in World War II that were parachuted behind the German lines during D-Day as we fought to reclaim France. And as you know from working and understanding what's going on in the Israeli military, the IDF, that the military deals with issues of deployment, possible combat and actual combat exposure, and the risk for PTSD. And the real headlines from this study thus far is that we have some of the strongest results in a randomized clinical trial on reducing divorce, and these are with young couples. 1 year later, the PrEP couples in red had about a 2% divorce rate. The control couples about a 5%. In year 2, the PrEP couples about 7.5%, and the control couples about 12%. So the U.S. military, all branches use versions of PrEP tailored to their situation. And the military has really concluded that the relationship quality, marital quality matters, that what the soldiers are doing on the battlefield is a function in part of what's going on in their home life. So as I'm wrapping up here, some really big picture points that I want to really note, that in order to make to get into the hands of the couples that can really benefit from premarital education, that we really need government support. That otherwise it just doesn't seem to work, and it needs to be a message to the country, the community, that like for the military, that we care about the health and well-being of our country and the couples, because it really does affect the health and well-being of the country. in Singapore right now that all couples planning marriage can take a version of the PrEP program. This is supported fully by the Family Ministry in Singapore, and over 5,000 couples thus far have participated in the PrEP program, and we're currently evaluating the results of the study. In the United States, due to the data on the well-being of children as affected by growing up in a healthy, stable two-parent family, the government invests about $75 million every year in marriage education programs with a focus on premarital education, because we know that that's probably the best time to invest in marriage education in terms of getting the biggest bang for our buck, to use a U.S. Expression. Now, we don't have great data on the effectiveness, cost effectiveness of premarital education. The most recent estimates from a colleague, Alan Hawkins at Brigham Young University in Utah, where he's working with the state government there to invest in premarital education. And the estimate is that in this very small state of Utah, where they have about 25,000 marriages a year, that each year that they would save $16 million. And if you do the cost effectiveness analysis, according to Hawkins, that if you invest $1 in pre-marriage education, you will save at least $80 in cost associated, preventing the costs associated with marital distress and divorce. So I want to end with this statue, Hope, by Nicky Ember. I actually have one of the statues that he made, one of 24 that I purchased on a recent trip to Israel and Safad. This is actually displayed in Carmiel in the Holocaust Park there, and it's called Hope. It's called Hope. So I have hope that the Israeli government decides to invest in pre-marriage education, and I have hope that through pre-marriage education that Israel will be able to strengthen the quality of marriages and families in Israel, preventing divorce, and overall having a happier, healthier family life that will extend through all aspects of the Israeli culture. And here's my son, Matthew, who's a joint U.S.-Israeli citizen, and his wife, Ellie, who were married in the desert last year. And so on behalf of my family, my parents, I want to say toda, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Markman, for a very enlightening presentation. We will now move on to the נעבור לחלק של המצגות. יש לנו כאן כמה
We have a number of experts from a number of fields, and we will begin with Professor Michael Humphreys. He made Aliyah in 1987, and he lives in Bet Shemesh today. He has a master's degree in economics from the Texas University, and he served as the deputy chair for business administration in Torah College here in Jerusalem. He teaches financing and administration for over 20 years. So please, Professor Humphreys, hello, thank you. I was asked to talk about economy and about marriage. And I think that there are so many studies in this regard, and there's a lot of information about this topic. As an economist, my perspective is a micro perspective as well as a macro perspective. That means that I have a personal perspective regarding the couples themselves and how this affects the economy in general. So my personal perspective, from the micro perspective, that is, the structure of the family, and in terms of economical welfare, you can actually calculate welfare in a number of ways. Income, family income, which the employment of the couple, how much they are worth financially, and poverty, of course, but also if they get any sort of benefits, welfare benefits, or are they dependent on the welfare services. Now, what we do know is that a family with a married couple usually again make more money than when there is divorce in the family or when they are single parents. Usually the income for a married couple is usually double that of divorced families and fourfold than couples that have been separated but have not yet gotten divorced. Another study has found that married men, and this is very interesting actually, make on average about 60% more per hour than their non-married colleagues. There is a specific study that actually includes the state of Israel as well that has found that in Israel, married men again make about 20% more than non-married men. And another study on men that live with their partner but are not married, the men on average are less stable in terms of occupation in comparison to married men. Their partners usually get less of a stable employment or occupation. They work less hours a month on average. So this impact that marriage has in terms of employment, occupation is pretty strong, at least as far as men go. A study that was conducted in 2013 by Robert O'Neill from City University of New York discovered that divorced women have an income of about 1.7% above the poverty line. On the other hand, married women had again 3.5 times more than the average salary. As to the negative aspect of this, in terms of the divorced couples, we have the results, of course, of divorce can be pretty dire, especially when it comes to women. That means that the impact on income when it comes to divorced people, the impacts will be negative, more so on women. A study that was conducted in 2008 found that divorce pushes many women, 44% that is, into the poverty circle, and they are very much dependent on the income of the partner. As to those women in the lower circles of income, this affects again poverty again, and the financial situation of the parent that has the children, has custody over the children, is drastically impacted by divorce. The parents that have custody are affected in that income drops by 32% following divorce. As to the macro perspective, how it affects the entire economy, what are the economical advantages to the economy that marriage has, or alternatively, what are the negative impacts that divorce has on the economy at large? The study that was conducted in 2011 discovered the decrease in productivity in the United States. In the past 50 years, we saw what's happening in terms of divorce. It already surpassed the 40%. And the question was, in that study, does it undermine the economy in any way? And what we did see is that it did. And this damage is manifest in terms of how it undermined equity and capital. Meaning there are two different types of capital. There is physical capital, and that is infrastructure and things like that. There's also equity or human capital, which is the information, the knowledge that a person has. And what we did see that in the case of divorce, there were negative impacts on children, and they are the equity, they are the human capital, any human capital of any country. Inter alia, we also saw that children of divorced couples will not be making a high income in future, at least not more than their parents. You know, usually we expect our children to be making more than us, and every generation usually makes more, and in comparison to their parents. But in the case of children to divorced parents, this does not happen. On the contrary, they usually earn less. We also see that the level of education of, again, parents to divorced parents is lower than those of children who are not children to divorced parents. So again, we see a decrease in human capital, as I mentioned, which also undermines the economy at the end of the day. What we did see in the USA and in Europe, that this can even reach 0.5% per annum. This, I mean, on the GDP, this impacts the GDP by 0.5% a year. And the growth of an economy is like an interest. It's something cumulative. Thank you.
The next speaker just had a new grandchild. He will also be speaking by video. It's Judge Philip Marcus, who he left the bench in 2012 to engage in research.
Hello, everybody. I'm Philip Marcus. I am very grateful to Susan for the invitation to talk to you in this very important event about concerning education, pre-marriage education. That is, I really apologize for my absence, but it's for a good reason, the birth of my grandson. So please forgive me. For 17 years, I was a judge of family in the family court, but since having retired, I deal in research and in writing and in all sorts of issues that are related to children, to courts, divorce processes, about parental alienation and parental obligations. And that is why I have now come to this very important encounter with a very clear message from 30 years of experience in the field. The increase in the number of claims and applications in wake of separation between parents really does take its toll. And there is and this goes mainly for the children, because I think pre-marriage education can very much reduce, and quite significantly so, the claims, the lack of clarity, the difficulties that are the cause of the separation. There are many studies that show and prove that children of divorced parents get sick more often. They they get involved in crime. Their scores are lower. Professor Jared Kaplan in the 70s and in the 80s recorded the fact that if in the general population 10% of the people suffer from emotional problems or all sorts of behavioral or personality disorders or social disorders, among children of divorced parents, this can reach 30%. Judith Wallerstein in the USA followed quite a large group of children to divorced parents. She recorded the difficulties of those children in wake of a separation and the divorce of the parents. And we have to emphasize the fact that people who are sick, and it makes no difference what the reason is, people who fail in all sorts of social missions or roles, people who, deal in prostitution or use drugs or become criminals, the price that society has to pay is a very high one. A child, an adolescent,
שמתעסקים בעניינים
again,
בלתי
are
חוקיים,
engaged in illegal
או
activity or
שמתדרדרים מבחינה
deteriorate
נפשית
emotionally
ואישיותית,
speaking or in terms of personality,
המדינה
the
מוציאה
state
כסף
has
על בתי
expenses
משפט, על
on
עובדים
social
סוציאליים,
workers, on
על
courts,
קציני מבחן,
on
על בתי כלא, על בתי
probation
חולים,
officers, on
על פסיכיאטרים,
psychiatrists, on
על
psychologists, on
מעונות,
daycare
על כל
centers, and
מיני
all sorts
הוצאות
of
כאלה.
expenses such as
את
these.
אלה
And I
סבורני
think that most
שרובם
of these
ככולם
expenses
ניתן
can be
לצמצם
reduced
על ידי חינוך
through
לקראת
pre-marriage
נישואין
education
וגם
and
חינוך לקראת
by means of
ילודה.
prenatal education. I
החינוך
think the
לקראת נישואין
pre-marriage education
צריך
has
להתרכז
to focus on the
בהבהרה
clarification that
שיחסים
any
זוגיים
relationship
הם
between a
מורכבים
couple are
ממחויבויות
comprised of
של האיש
commitments
כלפי
of the
האישה
man towards
והאישה
the
כלפי
woman, the
האיש.
woman towards the man.
לקראת הורות
And also,
צריך להדגיש שמדובר
before
במחויבויות
parenting takes
כלפי
place, we have to
הילדים
emphasize the
של
fact that there are
ההורים.
commitments of the
לא
parents. We're not
זכויות
talking about
מדובר.
rights, we are talking
ולא אהבה
not only
רומנטית.
talking about romantic love, we're
הרי
talking about commitment,
החינוך
because
צריך להיות
education
לקראת
must be
נישואין,
for
לא לקראת
marriage,
החתונה.
not for the wedding. And that
ולכן
is why
יש צורך
we must
בשינוי
change
בגישות
certain
מסוימות
approaches
אשר
that
רווחות לצערנו הרב,
unfortunately
אשר
really
גורמות
focus on some things and
לכשלים
actually
ביחסים
cause
זוגיים.
problems among the couple.
לכן אני
That is why
מוסיף
I would
את
like
קולי
to
לאלה
add my own voice to
שקוראים
those
לכך
call
שיהיה חינוך
to
לקראת
educating
נישואין זמין
and for there to be
ויש
available pre-marriage education. And I would like to
זוגות,
encourage
לעודד
young
אנשים
people
צעירים
and couples to
להשתתף בקורסים
participate
או
in courses
בהרצאות
and lectures
בעניינים
that
האלה.
deal in these issues.
ואני
And I very much
מעודד
encourage
את היוזמה
the
שהמפגש
initiative
הזה
that
נועד
this
לקדם.
meeting wishes to promote.
תודה.
Thank you so much.
יש לנו כאן את חבר כנסת מיכאל
We have here Knesset member Michael Michaeli from Shas. He has dealt with in the past and continues to deal with many problems involving marriage, both pre-marriage and as well as after marriage. He has also written in-depth research and he will present his result. The committees of the Knesset hear a lot of things that usually deal with very small groups in the population. Sometimes we sit for hours and we talk about sub-paragraphs of laws, and there are very few people that are actually affected by them. When I saw the first advertisements about this conference, I went over to my good friend Yehudah Glick, and I said I wanted to speak. It's important for me to speak because last year I wrote a paper on this subject. I did an MA in public policy at the Hebrew University, and everyone was asked to write a policy paper on a subject close to his heart. And the intention was to translate it somehow into either a bill or a proposal for an ordinance. And when I sat with the person that I worked with together, he had worked here in the Knesset too, not as an MK, but he worked here in the Knesset. And what we came up with were the following things that I will be speaking about. I came from a completely different place. You know, we're talking about money here, and you talk about how bad marriage is, and in the end, when you go to the finance ministry, they want to see the numbers. How much do I invest, and how much does the state make from it? And I wanted to look at the state budget for single-parent families, most of whom are divorced families. Some are not divorced, but the large majority are divorced parents. Over 2 billion shekels is from the welfare ministry alone, and that is invested in single-parent families. 2 billion shekels a year. When we're talking about the wider circles, when we look at studies of the children of divorced families and how much care they need afterwards, we reach other ministries and other departments that were not included in the original 2 billion, like the Ministry of Education, Welfare, and even Internal Security. In other words, the state's investment in families that are divorced or rather single parent families as a result of divorce, and it is huge, and it's impossible to give the exact figure because it goes far beyond the original 2 billion to much wider areas. I've spoken to various government representatives, and it is proved that families that are properly prepared for marriage, there are far fewer cases of divorce. It's never 100%, but when we're talking about the ultra-Orthodox society, before I got married, it was clear that we went to a course. It was a huge course. My wife and I each went to a course. It wasn't just about Jewish law. It was to teach us what the meaning of a Jewish home is. And ultimately, it saves money. I have the figures, they're clear, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. I would like to call on my good friend Yehudah Glick to raise the gauntlet, and if it is in the form of a bill, to do this, because it's worthwhile economically to require every couple before divorce. But we're talking here about couples when they come to register for marriage, before they get married. I corrected myself immediately. I realized that I was mistaken, so that they will get this proper training before they get married. It's worthwhile in every sense, of course for the sake of marriage, but in economic terms as well. I'm honored now to call upon MK Yehudah from Kulanu. She is the chair of the Children's Rights Committee, and she prioritizes the benefit of the child and always emphasizes the importance of parents. I'd like to thank Yehudah Glick for raising this important subject and for the attendance we have here in the room. And I've read what Susan has written on the subject. I think it's very moving that I, as the chair of the Children's Rights Committee, find additional partners for the subject of healthy, optimal marriage, and not only in terms of economics and not only from the point of view of the couple, but for the children that grow up in a family, that the children know how to deal with the challenges that face them in the marriage better. Because sadly, as we see, I deal mainly with children from broken homes, and the crisis is very great. And when the crisis happens, it's usually the focus is on the wars between the parents, and the children somehow get lost in the middle of that. And I have raised the subject also in the committee, the importance of training parents to know how to deal better with a changing reality and the changing challenges we face today as parents. And in the debate we held just last week, I talked about the subject of education for parenthood and good married life even before marriage, in high school already, when kids are starting to go out and couples are starting to form, to see already there where we can plant the first seeds so that they will know how to maintain a good relationship and a healthy relationship. And I know from studies around the world that I've read that when there is a process, an ongoing process of education for happy marriage, as we've seen here, then there are better chances of increasing the number of successful surviving marriages, and it may be possible to avoid divorce. We're seeing close to a third of the marriages ending in divorce, inching towards seeing 50%. I think we need to learn how to deal with the crisis couples face without breaking up the marriage. It's good for the couple. It's good for the children. I think this is indeed a national mission that we should all be part of. You talked about Chilik, that he's happily married and he has children. So I too, thank God, am happily married. I am privileged unfortunate. I've been married for 23 years, and I've been with my husband for 28 years. Not everything's always rosy, and that's fine. But I have to say, honestly, that's part of the beauty. Today I'm 44. My son is 21. He's finishing the army. My other son is joining the army in 2 weeks. I have a younger daughter. When I look at my children and my family, I'm proud of everything we've gone through these 28 years together, and we know how to. I hope your husband appreciates you too. I would like to wish every couple that's starting out here that in 20, 30 and more years' time they'll be able to look back with pride at the path they've taken together, even if it wasn't easy. I want to be part of everything you are doing here, Yehudah, in the context of the committee or the lobby or anything. I will use your good connections with the finance ministry then. I feel that I am a full partner to everything you are doing here. Thank you for everyone. And now we will hear from attorney Idit Shacham. She established the first public center in Ramat Gan and she's also involved in national organizations for weakened populations. The organization is called Collaborative Divorce. I'm very moved to be here today. We talked about the state and about the budget, and now I'd like to come from a more personal, people-to-people place. I'm an attorney, and I haven't come here on behalf of an organization. I would like to start by saying that I've come here as a result of a very moving encounter with Susan Barth. We come from very different worlds, very different backgrounds, and we sat down and found how much we are speaking the same language, that the family is a value, that it is something that we must preserve and maintain, that a marriage is a family, and therefore the unbearable lightness of divorce about which so much has been said, that every single one of us must see how we can prevent this growing phenomenon. I define myself as a social lawyer, as a lawyer who is an agent of change in regard to the subject of crisis in the family. I am in favor of collaboration, and our voice is not heard. I'm not here as a representative, as I said, but there are quite a few attorneys who believe that they have an educating role in the whole subject of crisis in marriage. Our educating role, we attorneys, we are the ones who meet the spouse or the couple together for the first time in the initial stages of their crisis. They come to us, they are upset, they are hurt, they are hurting, they're angry, they're looking for some way out, and I think we have a role to educate them. Our role as attorneys is not to hurl them at each other in struggles and wars, but rather we should say to them, how can we help you? And can we halt the escalation that could continue and burst out at any moment? This place that I am talking about is not just around the world of the legal world. I don't think we can talk about marriage without talking about a broader aspect. It's been mentioned here, but I'd like to emphasize it further, that when we're talking about a crisis, we're talking about children, and that is the first thing that we all agree, that our role is to protect them from the impact of the crisis, but there's also the legal aspect, the economic aspect, and the emotional aspect. This work of this center that I very proudly say, we have 7 centers throughout the country. They are community centers, or they work inside the local municipality without budgets, really out of a sense of commitment on the part of each of the people. The multidisciplinary team of attorneys, therapists, and financial advisors, and children's psychologists. Collaborative divorce is a method. There are a lot of different organizations in Israel, but I must say that Israel is really blazing a trail in the world, and I've just come back from a conference in Maryland where I presented different models of centers for dispute resolution in the family for weakened families. In other words, the method should be accessible to every family and every individual, and not only those who can afford it. It's important to present you, because I said I come from a personal place, but also from a public place, to describe a single case. I'll be very brief. In which the process began with a couple when the husband left the home because of violence. For a year, the team worked day and night, and this couple is today together again happily. And I think this is an achievement. And this morning I got a text message, and if I may, I'd like to share it with you. We're talking about a couple where the husband became religious, the wife remained secular, and he became very ultra-Orthodox, and she wrote the following: despite the gap is growing in our lifestyles, we are showing each other's respect, and we are placing our children at the top of our priorities, and we are both keeping to our side of the agreement we signed on. Things have come into proportion, and we're learning to build a new family together. Looking back, the process that we underwent enabled us to engage in a discourse that we could not have held on our own. Thank you for the privilege of being a family.
Now we would like to put up on Dr. Rachel Lev-Moore, who is a rabbinate pleader and helps women who are gunot, who have not been able to get their divorce from recalcitrant husbands. I met Susan a number of years ago when she came to help me in the challenge that I set in my life. And I saw how she was developing the whole issue of pre-marriage education. And it really fit in together. My topic and hers, they were sort of intertwined. So she was my support group, and I was her support group, and I would like to thank you, Susan. Thank you so much for inviting me today. We heard a lot about preventing problems and how pre-marriage education through the PRE program or in any other way, how it can prevent divorce. And from my little corner of the world, I want to try and prevent a more acute problem within the problem of divorce. And that acute problem is when a woman is not able to get a get from her husband, or women who refuse to accept a get from their husbands. That is a very acute situation, but it's usually much more acute and problematic when the woman is not able to get a get from the husband because the husband refuses to give a get. For Jewish couples, pre-marriage education and the prenuptial agreement, or the agreement for mutual respect for the prevention of get refusals, are actually the two tools that can give the couple the greatest foundation for marriage. Now, why am I saying Jewish marriages? Because in the case of marriage, according to divorce, according to the halakha, there is not a level playing field, and a get refusal is always a possibility. So pre-marriage education and that prenuptial agreement for mutual respect together make both spouses aware and make them understand that they both count within that family unit, and both have a say in all issues in an equal manner. So the pre-marriage education and the agreement work in conjunction to give that couple the best start in a marriage. And together, both at pre-marriage education with a prenuptial agreement, can actually lay the foundation for a loving and respectful relationship. For example, one of the byproducts of these tools, and this was mentioned before, maybe we didn't notice, but he said that after, again, the preparation through the PREP, there is a small percentage, something like 5 or 10%, that he said that decide not to get married because of that education. That is also a type of success. It may sound to Jewish mothers like a failure, but it can definitely be a success story. So again, one of the byproducts of these tools is that a couple may discover that they should not really be getting married. They're just not suitable, or the best case scenario, they might delay their marriage until they have the time to take that course, that pre-marriage course, and sign that prenup. From that understanding that this is the best thing to do and to prevent future conflict and talk about acute conflict. And both pre-marriage education and that Heskem Lekavod, that prenup agreement, bring the couple to really communicate with each other, whether in marriage or in divorce. So even if the marriage is not successful and doesn't hold up, there won't be additional trauma during the time of the marriage and the divorce. And the children, we talked about children. Also, children of divorced parents will learn proper conduct from their parents, and the couple, both partners, will be able to find a new spouse and to build a new family in Israel. And the children will learn how to build good relationship with partner, and they in their turn will build their own family units in Israel. And these healthy family units are the foundation stones of a healthy society. Thank you so much. She's the founder and the director of the Eden Director, which is an NGO that wants to improve marriage through various coaching. For 25 years, I have researched the whole issue of Taharat HaMishpacha, family purity. And in my research, I talked with dozens of women, hundreds of couples, of how to learn this halakha, the mitzvah of family purity in married life. And the studies have proven that although women have received coaching and mentoring for family purity before marriage, that really does give guidance as far as intimacy goes, and much is funded by the state, by the way. This type of learning it doesn't quite, hit home, and it doesn't always really make sure that the marriage will be happy. So what the interviewees told me, that they need further skills in terms of communication in order to deal with problems. Again, tools that have to do with the mediation in order to build positive communication, whether verbal or otherwise. The family purity and framework that is currently available, it does not really give a solution to all the needs, because many of those coaches, the color coaches, really and truly believe that fulfilling all the halachot of family purity will somehow provide tools for dealing with problems in marriage. But this has not proven to be true. They also feel that they don't have time to give, more than the halachic needs or the halachic rules and discussions because of the following reasons. The actual coaches or mentors are not aware that kalot, that young brides, and that all these issues of communications are important, maybe are even more so than the actual halacha. And also because these kala mentors, these bride coaches, have to, they themselves did not receive proper training in these issues, and that is why they cannot relate to these issues. A few initial efforts are being done to train these kala mentors, these bride coaches, in issues like intimate discourse, awareness of sexuality. And this happens in Sohar, in Be'er Emunah, and in the Eden Center. That is the NGO that I run. But these efforts have to be expanded. because these communication proficiencies and skills can easily be integrated in the teaching of family purity in terms of halakha. And if it's done in a natural way and in a simple way, it will just feel that this is an integral part, a crucial part of, learning, lechatchila, in the best possible way of learning all these issues when approaching marriage. And that is why I feel the need to say that as far as I'm concerned, this guidance, this coaching has to be done for the brides and the bridegroom, because I think one of the approaches today is that we have to look at this relationship through equality. Also, learning halakha has to be something mutual, and the focus has to be on constructive communication and solving problems in the relationship. So both of the partners have to be involved in this learning process. As far as I'm concerned, every chatan, every man has to receive training, and the two coaches, the one working with the man and the one working with the woman, have to also cooperate and just talk with each other. That would be the ideal situation. And just like other skills and proficiencies, it is known that theoretical learning is not implemented in reality and just learned in theory is not the same as real-time learning, because learning about family purity is done before the couple has experience with the real life of marriage. And I think some of the models of learning about family purity and communication understand that using different approaches also after marriage, like weeks and months after the marriage, those are the foundations of success. That is why this whole training for couples has to include materials and topics beyond family purity and halakha. And we have to train those coaches both for the men and the women, and they have to be able to provide support for the future as well.
We will now hear from Rabbanit Goldie Plotkin, who is the co-director of the Chabad of Markham in Thornhill, Ontario, and who will discuss the spiritual and religious aspects pertaining to the issue that we're discussing here today.
So first of all, it's an honor to be here. Thank you, Susan, for inviting me. B'hashgacha pratis, I was in Israel because my husband and I, shluchim of the Rebbe in Toronto, we were taking a trip from our community members from Poland to Israel. And they went home yesterday morning. Susan said, there's this marriage thing at the Knesset. My passion is marriage. I'm married 32 years, and I think today's theme not only is marriage, but I think today's theme is babies. And as I speak, my daughter's in labor. So she's in Toronto, I'm here, okay, Susan. And I just want to ask everyone in this holy Israel and whoever's in this room to give a bracha for an easy delivery and healthy baby to Chayit Sirli, Besesta Goldie. And even maybe when this is over, I'll be able to tell you if it's a boy or a girl. Amen. Thank you. So Maz and I started immediately when we arrived to Toronto. We started talking about marriage. We started giving classes. Now in Toronto, if you want to get married by an Orthodox rabbi, you must take classes. And it's not like you were saying just Taharat Mishpacha. That's a very small detail of a marriage. There's the communication. There's the awareness that men and women come from different planets and that they speak different languages. And how do men and women know this when they're young? And we deal specifically with couples that are not religious. That's who comes to a Chabad. And we're very comfortable in that surrounding. So one of the reasons we give these classes is because we need to tell them why marriage is worth saving. Because if you think about it, why do we get married? To buy a house? I don't know, Toronto, men and women buy houses and they're not married. To have kids? You and I both know a lot of people who had kids without getting married. So why are we getting married? It's an amazing question. A lot of people don't know the answer. Because in Judaism, marriage is kadosh. And when a man and a woman stand under a chuppah, they bring Hashem, they bring God as the third partner. And when a husband and wife begin their journey with Hashem's blessing, they're already starting to success. And together with the chuppah, and together with marriage classes, and understanding male and female, we have an opportunity to be a success. So I try to explain to them, how do we know what's kadosh? So the Talmud, it's a really good book, by the way. You know, in South Korea, they actually studied the Talmud too. The Talmud tells us that 40 days before a baby is born, a voice rings out in heaven and says, the daughter of so-and-so will marry the son of so-and-so. So what is the Talmud telling us? That in Shemayim, in heaven, there's a neshama. It's comprised of a male and a female. At birth, the neshama splits. A little girl gets the female soul, and a little boy gets the male soul. And for the next 20, 30, or 40 years, they look for each other. They're looking for a lost item. The other day, I was in Israel, and I took off my diamond ring to wash, and I lost it. Okay, I just got it from my husband. It's a very expensive ring. You can imagine. I was going crazy. I ran all over the streets of Yerushalayim looking for my ring. And when I found it, I was like, oh, I found my ring. We call two zivugim, two couples, a couple getting married, as if they found a lost item. They're finding each other. That's what the Talmud says. So the Talmud explains that these are soulmates. They're not just sporadic people that bump into each other and they fell in love. This is the female soul met her partner and they get married. The Zohar goes even deeper and says that it's palga de gufa, that they're actually one body. We know when Adam and Chava were created, they were born together as an androgynous being. And then Hashem put Adam to sleep and separated them. So when a couple gets married, it's not just a soul reunion, it's a physical body reunion. And that's when you look at some couples, and Susan, you and I were having dinner last night, and you said your parents had such an amazing relationship. When you look at older couples, they begin to look alike. They sound alike. They have the same mannerisms. One can finish the other one's sentences. So it's soul and body. When one of us hurts, the other one feels the pain. The tzaddik Rabbi Yehudah Glick actually says, he tells the story when he went into the doctor's office, his wife's foot was hurting, and he says to the doctor, "Doctor, can you please help my wife? Her foot hurts us. Her foot hurts us. It's not my husband, that man, he's in pain. I'm in pain when my husband's in pain." Couples have to appreciate how deep and important this relationship is. The Rebbe speaks so much about marriage and that the foundation, and I think MK Malkiel mentioned before, the foundation of the Jewish people is a stable home. The whole world is looking at what's happening in Israel. You probably don't think so, but in Canada and in the United States and in Australia, people are opening up the internet and looking at the Yediot Acharnot. They're looking at the Jerusalem. What's the talk in the Knesset? And you think, no one's listening. We're listening, we're learning, we want to know, because you are the light onto the nations. And the way you go is the way we go. So this is the most crucial legislation you can pass. Because the Jewish people, chas v'shalom, if our marriages fall apart, there goes the Jewish family. Who are we if not for our homes? Who are we if not for Shalom Bayit? So this legislation is so crucial and so important that in Metz Hashem, I plan to go back to Canada, and I will make sure that I will pass something as well in the Canadian government in Ontario, and I hope that I will take your message to Canada, and from there it will continue. It will have a rippling effect. I want to conclude with a story that actually happened here in Israel. A few years ago, when Israel was fighting in the Lebanese army, they called up, all the young men, all men. And there was a young husband that had just got married 4 months earlier. He goes up to the army, and unfortunately, he's hit with a bullet. He's rushed to the hospital, and they tried to save his leg, and they couldn't. And they had to amputate his right leg. He's sitting in the hospital bed recovering, and he texts his wife, and he says to her, "Motek, I love you so much, and we have such a beautiful marriage, but I have to tell you the truth. I just had an operation and they amputated my leg. You are such a young, beautiful woman. I want to give you permission to divorce me and to get on with life. You don't deserve to be married to a man with only one leg. And she sends him back a message and says, what? You think I married you for your legs? I married you for you. And you're still here. That's the essence of a marriage. We look deeper than just superficialities, than physicalities. We look at the essence. We look at the neshama, the zivug, the soulmate, the bashert. And when we come, the Jewish nation comes with that message, hopefully the rest of the world will follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much for an extremely moving and important presentation.
Now we will hear from people who work in the community about the subject that we're discussing.
When I conceived of doing this meeting, one of the goals was to bring every organization that is involved in some form of pre-marriage education basically to come to the table. Because the truth of the matter is, with each one, everyone has something to contribute. And so that I do not feel that I need to elaborate more on the particular curriculum that I took on as far as a partnership with Professor Howard Bachman, because I think he described it very well. And we have the exclusive partnership to bring IPREP, which is Israeli prep, to Israel, and I believe in it. But I decided that for the rest of the speeches that we ask people to limit them to 2 minutes, and what we want to do is to keep on schedule is to take 4:55 to 5, which is on your agenda, for me to say a few parting words, and then to continue for as long as people want to speak, because we're all here as one family. Having said that, one of the issues that bothers me personally is the fact that there is really not a strong program for the guys, so to speak. We have the women in terms of Tar Mishpacha, but in terms of men, they receive very little education. So that I invited a representative from the Miami Hudson Center to just spend actually, I have to cheat a little bit because mine's 1 minute and he gets the remainder of what would be my 2. So indulge me for his 3 minutes since he came from Miami. But to just give you a little bit of feeling about how important it is to have a program for the men. So without further ado.
Everybody said that marriage life and Shalom Bait is under fire, is on fire, and it affects every couple. Dati, Lo Dati, Israeli, Americai, every single marriage it affects. We concentrate in the Khatan, in the Khatanim, because we feel at this point, eventually we're going to move it also to Kalot, but like we were said by Dr. Naomi, they need much more, and everybody else, is much more than education about Taharat HaMishpacha, but you can see I'm a little nervous, first time at the Knesset. I will start with a story. About a few years ago, I had a Khatan who came to learn with me. After the Shiva Brachot, the mother calls me and she says, something is wrong with the couple. So I said, what's wrong? He says, I don't know, but something is wrong. I called the Khatan and I said, how are you doing? He says, not good. So I said to him, what's going on? After talking a few minutes, he tells me that he has an addiction to internet. And to the bad parts of the internet. And because of that, he's affecting his marriage life, his Shalom Bait. Right away, obviously, I made the contacts and sent them to the right place. But over there is where he hit us, that there is so many problems that we have to deal with, that obviously Taharat HaMishpacha is just one aspect of it. My name is Rabbi Yossi Srugo. I was born in Argentina, the country of Messi, Maradona. I'm serving as a mohel in Miami, rabbi and Khatan teacher to many Khatanim. I'm honored by Susan's invitation to speak before you at the Knesset. is really the zchut of my dear wife Nechami that I'm standing here before you today, because she has taught me so much about relationships. And like Rabbi Akiva says, Sheli v'shelachem shelahi. I was lucky to teach hundreds of chatanim and kalot, and I realized over time the need to educate our young couples to give them the tools to build the future of Am Yisrael. So together with many Florida Rabbanim, Rebbetzins, and marriage professionals, specifically, we created a marriage boot camp, also provided by the Jewish Community Services in Florida. We have created an intense program that will give you the tools to chatanim and kalot to build a healthy, meaningful, and intimate relationship. Our program will address Shalom Bayit from 3 different perspectives. First one is obviously halakha and hashkafa, emotional and financial aspect. Taharat HaMishpacha and hashkafa is the foundation of a Jewish home, like everybody mentioned. Bringing Hashem into your relationship, that is the base of marriage. Without that, there is no marriage. Second aspect of it is our Shalom Bayit bootcamp will help Chatanim and Kalot answer to themselves many questions. The first question is, who am I? Self-awareness is the key to create a healthy relationship. If you don't know who I am, if I don't know who I am, I'm not able to give to the other person. Also, what do I want from my life? Where are my goals? What are the values in my life? And why am I getting married? If they don't know that, they're going to cut it short. Being present. If a person is not being present when he's in the house with his family, he might as well be divorced because he's not there. Love and respect, do's and don'ts of marriage, healthy intimacy, internet exposure, where to go when you need help. And the last part is financial advice that will focus on how to look for a job, budgeting, how to save money for the future, the pros and cons of credit cards. I will end with a blessing to the Knesset and to the organizers of this beautiful event with the pasuk, Matovo alecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Israel, that you, the Knesset, should be a source of light and influence to all Am Israel, with true Shalom Bayit based on Torah and mitzvot for couples, families, and finally, Venatati Shalom Ba'aretz, Amen ve'amen.
We have prepared the initiative for the board with the help of MK Yehudah Glick, so that the public discourse will engage with the subject of preparation for marriage. And we understood that even if the state agreed to subsidize part of the sum, we realized it would be only a small part of the sum that was needed, but it would be an important declaration that the state, that the government sees the importance of education for marriage. We all know that the preparation of a small number of meetings cannot be enough, but it can give the couple the feeling and the knowledge that if they do encounter a crisis that they can't deal with on their own, they know that there are professionals that can help them, and they won't need to get down that slippery slope of crisis that ends in divorce. They would get a very small toolbox, but the fact that they have had that experience of professionals giving them those tools, they know that there are solutions. There are bills that are populist. There are some that come from the academia. There are those that come from the field. At Sohar, we marry 5,000 couples a year. We, as rabbis, meet with these couples before the chuppah, and we talk to them. And from the field, we could feel the need for this preparation because we saw that couples were coming to their marriage, to their relationship. They didn't know what good communication skills were. They hadn't calibrated their expectations. And if this law could somehow jumpstart a public discourse on the subject, and also create an understanding in the education system, in the welfare system, and especially among people who engage in this area, so they understand the urgent and crucial need in this area. If we can do something in that direction, then we've done a lot. And if MK Glick has not yet despaired because the law has already been postponed once, and he's, as he, so typical of him, he's willing to start leading it again, I'm sure we'll succeed in the end.
I'm taking the prerogative to not officially close, just give a few concluding remarks, and then everyone who wants to stay, we're here till midnight, as long as they don't kick us out. But today, we made history. Today, the Israeli parliament hosted a historic session where, for the first time in the nation's history, the concept of integrating marriage education as a formal and potentially legal component of Israeli marriages was discussed at the highest levels. And as a result of this meeting, it is up to each of us to continue the discussion of promoting the topic and the issue by legislative and other means to serve as a conduit to effectuate real change for Israeli society and to confront the challenges of divorce and marital strife. Our spiritual mentor, Rabbi Dr. Leibel Wolf, made a pretty apt observation when he said that terrorism, antisocial behavior, family breakups, all of these are due to one underlying reason: poor family modeling to our children. To love our children, you must demonstrate that love openly, spending quality time with them, acknowledging, complimenting them, and making them feel important and significant. And most importantly, to teach them positive values that we Jewish people gave to the world. And the best way of doing that is to show by example, speak to them openly, and by showing them what your marriage can be, you are setting the best example for their heritage for the future, because they will watch you carefully and model you. And perhaps a good start is for each of us to invite one another for Friday night, to use the Shabbat table as an opportunity to bring young couples, invite them over, and to bond and show them what a real atmosphere could provide for their future. We ourselves, I'll just tell you a very, very quick thing, and that is that the movers and shakers in the United States not only have been involved in providing the research, but they are so excited the fact that we're doing something in Israel, that the non-Jewish person who was literally almost the guru in the United States, he was so excited, he sent me a link to a national website, and he said, I haven't even shown my colleagues this, but I want you in Israel to demonstrate this first. So we have, with his help, we're going to launch a national website, and it's going to show everything, the marriage initiatives across the country, so that we can feel that we are making history in every single region of the country. And we're going to, with his help, because he gave it to us as a secret, but he wanted so much for us to really make a difference in this country. And so we're going to keep all of you informed. We want, you're all partners. We're all in this together, because the main thing is that pre-marriage education and marriage education has to be a national agenda. It has to be the best wedding gift that we can give couples as a prescription for healthy and happy marriages and intact families. Pre-marriage education not only saves all the anguish, but it saves the treasury. And we showed by Professor Markman how much the statistics support that savings. That's the reason why so many states, President Bush many years ago allocated $150 million for marriage education. A new industry evolved from there, and there are states from Florida to Texas to California that all have this kind of legislation. And it works, and we need to adopt similar here. But the main thing is each of us have to leave this room with carrying the marching orders of what we are each going to do to make this a national agenda topic. And I believe that we can do it. Because why? Because we just made history.
Thank you again, Susan, and thank you for your leadership in your role in making this event possible and bringing this issue to the public awareness. And we look forward to continuing to see great things from you and the organization.
Now we will hear from Galia Paz from the Israeli Center for Mediation and Conflict Resolution. I would like to congratulate Susan and MK Glick for this initiative, and that Israel will join the other countries in the world that have these laws, and that all those, we're seeing this in many countries in the world. The preparation for marriage is not a new thing. In the play, The Golem, the wife of the bride gave her, when she reached puberty, a roll of wool, and she said, unravel the wool without tearing the thread. And so that what you wanted to say was that she should show patience and tolerance to her husband. Today, of course, we have equality between men and women, so the most effective way that we as a mediating organization believe is through mediation between couples. The mediation has two parts. The first part is mediation before marriage. Usually we look at mediation as a means to resolve conflicts. But a mediation is an open negotiation. We use the term non-competitive, but rather collaborative negotiation. And if it's matters of money or health, including genetic tests, or matters of career or education, or divorce, these are subjects that parents should talk, that couples should talk about before they marry. And if they work with a mediator who's a professional, he can bring the couple to talk about things that emotionally are difficult for them to talk about on their own, or because of pressure in their surroundings. And this can help them in their marriage life. Mediation is, first of all, a means to bring the sides to agree on things that are crucial for their divorce, or if they are separating, to separate amicably, because we learned just last week in the portion of the week where it says, we are brothers, we will separate in peace. And the second thing is, in this experience before marriage, to acquire the tools so that they, if they are unsuccessful themselves, they know that they can go to a professional mediator to learn how to live in peace together. So again, congratulations on this initiative. We have 4 more speakers, and please keep your remarks brief. Dr. Daniel Gottlieb of the Shinui. I think that the timing of this conference this week is very appropriate. I look around, there are a lot of people who may not have televisions home, but there's a new program on TV called Marriage at First Sight, a reality program that is showing the worst contempt possible for the institution of marriage. And we are here because we believe just the opposite. I think that I'm the clinical director of a private institute that gives therapy to families and couples and children, and I work a lot with families who are involved in divorce. And I think that the advantage or benefit that we can achieve from programs like the kind we're talking about today is not only to help parents, but even more so to help the children, who are ultimately the weakest link. They don't have a lobby, they don't have Knesset members that vote on their behalf. So we have a Knesset member who absolutely lives for the rights of children. So I congratulate you on this initiative, and to the organizers. Nurit Nuriel from the Rabin Center for Marital Counseling. I would like to tell you about our organization. We've been around for 10 years, and we do couple counseling. We've given many courses like this since we were established. Some interesting details from the field that are worth thinking about. The 90+% of the workshops on marriage have been bought not by young couples but by their parents. And I think this figure tells us a lot about who we need to turn to and who we need to talk to about this subject. I think we need to get into the field and to make these services accessible and to lower the level of anxiety and to make a distinction between couples therapy, between counseling of a couple for a couple that's in a state of crisis, and courses that are educational, that provide tools without putting them under the heading of crisis or therapy. I'm familiar with all the stigmas and the anxiety that people have from the subject of therapy, and that sometimes prevents people from coming. But I see, and we in the Claire Rabin Institute, we sell these workshops. We see the difference. We know what the difference is between counseling for a couple that has failed, as it were, and giving tools to, yes, a man will always prefer a gift to counseling. And I think that this distinction will make it easier to get this subject through to the younger couples. Everyone here is a young couple, aren't they? And this is something we need to sell to a generation that still finds it a little hard to swallow. This is what we've learned from the field. Thank you very much. Ruven Kruger from MK Yehudah Center. Thank you very much. Thank you to the organizers, to the Knesset members. I would like to quote an Israeli poet, Rachel, who was not religious. She said of couple pain and weeping, wounds and pain. Couplehood is full of strength, and the Uri Orbach MK Yehudah Institute, and it's an honor to speak his name here in the Knesset. He was an example in his life of what it means not to agree with someone, but to show mutual respect. MK Yehudah was established in Modi'in as a pilot 2 years ago. We are the first clinic of its kind in Israel that offers different types of conflict resolution. First and foremost, mediation, coaching, and from experience in the field, 60% of the cases that come to us, couples in crisis, we created a program, odds or evens, and it gives a short, effective, it addresses the problems and needs of a couple in trouble very briefly and succinctly. It provides tools from the world of mediation because, as you know, mediation makes a very clear distinction between a position, a declaration, and a need. Where will we be on Seder night? Declaration. And needs, that's where the word is. And we tried to provide the tools to distinguish between these things, and also provide tools to help people learn how to listen. We also give a rebate on the marriage license of 200 shekels, and that they can use to come back for a refresher course 6 months later. My partners are sitting here. They're the ones who give the workshops, and they meet in the intake room with the couples. And we again invite all the organizations to get to know us. And I would like very proudly to say that the next workshops will be held on December 22nd and 29, and in January again, January 2 and 9th. The important things that we heard here today, they have a practical Israeli expression on the ground, religious and secular, and MK Yehudah. We invite you to join us. Thank you.
I'm Rabbi David Fine, head of the Barkai Center, which for training community rabbis and developing communities. We work with the communities, especially with the rabbis of the community. It's a big honor for me to be here, and I really do extend my blessings and thank Susan and MK Glick. And our vision is really to give a training course to community rabbis from all over Israel. Our course is intended for rabbis of communities only who work in the field with people. The course is a 2-year course. More than 600 years of study given by experts from all over the world in many kinds of areas, any areas that the community rabbi has to contend with. So we have already 60 rabbis that have taken our courses. Soon it will be 80, and with discussions and Susan's in order to train our rabbis through IPOP that Professor Markman mentioned. We are discussing it at the moment, and I really want to say that we are partners to this voyage. We see the community rabbi as somebody who has to be meaningful, relevant, has to be in the forefront of the battle for family marriage and against divorce. And our center is located in Modi'in, but rabbis come to us from all over Israel, as I said, and we are very happy to work on this very important issue. Thank you. Let me just extend my gratitude, really, and thank. The first rule of couplehood is attentiveness, listening. People sit here for 2 hours and listen. Thank you. And also, sticking to the times. I don't remember any committee in the Knesset that really stuck to the schedule. You, Jeremy and Susan, you really stuck to the schedule. That's great for relationships, by the way. And a final sentence, if I may, to my great teacher and my dear wife, who is in the hospital at the moment in a severe state. I wish she knew how much I esteem her, how much I appreciate her for teaching me so much in all about relationships. I really hope we can continue our relationship, and I would like to thank my wife for those 26 years that she taught me. She taught me what relationships are, what couplehood is, and thank you to everybody. I'm Ran Daniel. I'm from the Ovedia Institute. Ovedia Institute, about a decade ago, with its own funding and initiative, conducted or led international study of the essence of couplehood. It's the same as engineering. If you know what the essence of engineering is, construction engineering is, you understand the essence and the foundations of marriage. For example, people spoke of the discussion between partners, negotiating, pulling the strings within a marriage. I mean, this is just an example. Again, if negotiation means that every side pulls in his or her direction, that means each and every side has a conflict of interest. That's not really couplehood, because when it comes to couplehood and a relationship, there is common interest. And when you understand more deeply what the natural difficulties are that are integrated into marriage or any partnership and any relationship, and it is an arena for personal development, and it's a very difficult arena, and we are here in order to amend our midot, and this can only be done when things are difficult, not when things are just easy. So I think there is consent here that people can learn about relationship and couplehood. There is what to learn. And we really do join in this initiative, and we would like the state to convey this message to the general public that couplehood relationships can be taught, and you cannot be successful in building the building blocks of marriage without understanding the engineering of this couplehood. And if you don't know what you're doing, it will collapse. Even if we have every good intention, it will still collapse. Another thing that I would like to say here as to, again, the compatibility between the spouses, there isn't such a thing as absolute compatibility. I would say that these 88% incompatibility, but that is the challenge, because humans are so different one from the other. They think differently, and that is why we have to respect the other's inner wisdom, and to know when it comes to this common wisdom, and through the common wisdom we'll get to better solutions. So the bottom line is, I would like the law that will fund this education will not impose any limitation or reservation. People who are not in a relationship can still come. People who have random relationships can still come and learn about marriage and couplehood. I wish this can also be given to soldiers, to high school students, and even more so, by the way. There are so many topics that it's never too late to study. So we must not limit the funding to young couples only, before marriage or after marriage. But I think we should say it's never too late to learn about, relationships and marriage. And, people here who've been married 25 years, they talked about them. You know what? They only complete about a third of their married life, because, sustainable couplehood must continue for about 70 years. So they've completed the first trimester. Maybe that is the most difficult. We're talking about young people making children. We have to raise the children. You have to buy a home. That's the hard part. So the first trimester of marriage is the most difficult one. And that is why the whole issue of teaching couplehood to couples, even after 20 years, is definitely relevant, because even after 30 years of marriage, there's still another 40 years of marriage. So I just wanted to emphasize that point. Thank you so much. You said some very important things. Thank you so much.